I love this quote by Woodrow Wilson, and it has to do with public speaking. And it said, "If I speak for 10 minutes, I need a week for preparation. If 15 minutes, 3 days. If half an hour, 2 days. If an hour, I'm ready now." It's easy for any of us to get up and just speak off the top of our head, especially when we're an expert in something. But when we're being asked to deliver a persuasive speech that requires much thought and manipulation, I'm hoping you understand that it does take a lot of time, and with all the changes, most likely more than the 2 weeks I typically give, which is why we have 3 weeks to work on our persuasive speeches. I just want to kind of review. We know that the persuasive process, the persuasive speech, your goal is to influence your classmates' values, beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors about a certain topic. And you know that you're only going to try to do one of 3 things: to convince them to change, to move them into some action, or to inspire them to continue their feelings. But I want you to stop for a moment and think about, how are you going to do this? And that's what this video is about today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, I want you to really look at how to build your persuasive argument. And there are 5 steps. That's it. But each of these 5 steps will take a tremendous amount of thought and manipulation. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to introduce your topic. You're going to draw them in, and you're going to hit them with your thesis, because your thesis is actually telling them what you want them to do. Another thing that you need to do is you need to explain the important points so that the audience can not only understand your position, but look at it from all different vantage points. You're going to prove your thesis with your arguments and your supporting material. You're going to disprove your opponent's arguments, and you're going to end your speech on a bang so that they remember your topic. Now, persuasion, though, requires more than just thinking from the logical perspective. And I will talk about logic today, but it requires you to actually think about your ethos, pathos, and logos. So your ethos is your ethical appeal, your pathos is your emotional appeal, and your logos is your logical appeal. And while I'm focusing today on building the logical argument, I want you to understand that I'm not placing any less emphasis on ethos and pathos, because in order to really persuade, you have to make sure that those are evident throughout your speech. So the truth about persuasion, a lot of times people often think that if I'm going to persuade you, I'm just going to give you my side of the argument. And yes, you are going to support your side of the argument. You are going to build your side from the least important information that people need to know to the most important information. And you are going to, throughout the course of your 6 to 8 minute speech, form and state conclusions. But you cannot do this if you don't present both sides of the argument. To be logical, a presentation must be tested with a logical sequence. So I'm taking a little bit from philosophy for those of you that have had a philosophy class, and that is I need you to understand that a logical argument is actually a syllogism. So syllogisms come from Aristotle, and he had one that actually is used by and large by most educators, and that is: premise 1, all men are mortal. Premise 2, Socrates is a man. And then the conclusion: therefore Socrates is mortal. This is a logical syllogism which says that premise 1 is true. It's a fact. I can look it up. Premise 2 is a fact. I can look it up. Therefore, because both of those are facts, they connect, making the conclusion truthful. Aha! The goal of a syllogism is to arrange premises so that only one true conclusion is possible. If I go back a few slides, which I'm not going to, that means that when you build your argument, you start with the least important fact, something that's common knowledge, and then you connect your point, your argument to that, drawing conclusions, making sure that people see that there's only one conclusion that is possible. That means that you need to be specific. You need to lay out each premise or each argument clearly. You need to provide evidence for each premise, and you need to draw a clear connection between the evidence or the premise that you are giving and the conclusion that you are asking us to come to. You do this through your supporting material. And I know I talked about this in your informative speech, so this is just a review. So I'm just going to kind of let it go right here, assuming that you'll go back and look at these. But I want to reiterate something that I tried to enforce in the informative speech, and that is you have to have at least 3 or 4 types of supporting material. Did you hear me? You cannot only use one. You have to vary the supporting material. Why? Because it establishes ethos or credibility, and credibility is what the audience thinks of you. The more types of supporting material that you have, the more it shows the audience members that you have researched this topic, you understand this topic, and you are presenting in a way that will increase your competence, character, and then be shown through in your charisma. In Roman numeral 1C, that is your credibility. There you need to tell us, please don't list all the sources that you have researched, but tell us why you're an expert. Tell us why we should listen to you. Tell us what your stance is. And then make sure that you cite in your speech. Be honest, and sometimes you may not know everything about a topic. In fact, I anticipate that you don't know everything about a topic, and that's okay. But tell us what you do know, and make sure the information that you are actually sharing with us, you have researched and understand it so that you can connect it together in a clear and concise manner. And charisma comes from actually just being prepared. The more prepared you are, the more confident you are, the more lively as a speaker that you will be. Speakers will not be persuaded if they don't follow your structure. So competence and logic, or ethos and logos, go hand in hand. You need a plan for a change, a plan for the solution, and an approach to your argument that is practical and makes sense to the audience. Not only that, you need to be accurate. There are multiple fallacies that can be found in your book and also online, and I'll put some on Canvas. But you have to make sure that you are not using any of these fallacies. You have to make sure that when you are making an argument for us, that it is not only logical, but clear of any fallacies. Don't ask me to choose either or if there isn't any great reason for why I should choose this over this. Don't make something appear to be a fact when it's an inference. Don't use allness. Tell me everyone, no one, always, never. Don't be guilty of assuming that the world has not changed. For instance, I use the example as I have speeches on why you should quit smoking. And I often say those are not the best topics, because if you look at California, the number of smokers is actually down. The number of vapors is actually increased. So we have to look at our topics and make sure that we're picking something that's relevant to the time and the place. Be careful of stereotyping. I hear this all the time. People will say things, especially in my intercultural class, about all people from a particular ethnicity or all people that play a particular sport. And that is not true. Each of us is our own person. And last, don't define words based on the dictionary, because that's not how we live. We define words connotatively based on our emotional responses, based on the common definition that people have. We have to be accurate in our language because we have to choose language that is logical and not riddled with fallacies. Audiences want to be able to follow a speech. And if, for instance, you ask me to do a polarization or an either or, but I don't agree with your logic, I'm going to tune you out relatively quickly. But I have to go back to that there's a pyramid of persuasion, and persuasion actually means that you are trying to influence, either move, change, or inspire my attitude, my belief, or my value. My attitude is my tendency to behave in a certain way. And if you're trying to move, convince, or inspire an attitude, you need to A, know how I typically behave, and B, you need to figure out how do you shift that. Or maybe you're trying to move, convince, move, change, or inspire a belief. That means you're trying to actually go a little bit deeper, because you're not looking so much at how I behave, but more the existence or the truth of something. Do I find something to be right or wrong? The value is the core of who I am. And if you're trying to hit someone's values, you're really trying to get them to see that something that they may see as good or bad is the opposite. A value is something that is deeply rooted, and from one value we may have multiple beliefs and hundreds of attitudes. Know what exactly it is you are trying to do to your audience members, because it's only then that you can actually hit their pathos or their emotional appeal. Emotional appeal makes your listeners feel for your speech. So you have to have ethos, credibility. You have to have logos, logic. But if you don't have emotional appeal, your audience isn't going to listen, because few people move when they feel complacent. So if you don't make me feel for your speech, you're probably not going to persuade me to do very much.